All right, for the next problem that we are going to do, we are going to use a frequency distribution that was created in a previous example. This is example 3 from page 737 of the book. That's where this frequency distribution comes from. And whenever you get a frequency distribution, we want to create pictures of the data. That we're visual learners. We take in information visually, so we want people to be able to look at a good picture that accurately reflects the data. So the first picture we are going to create is called a histogram. Histogram is a bar graph that represents our data. And so the data that we have here, notice it has 6 classes. Okay, the first class is 31.5 to 37.6, and the last class is 62.5 to 68.6. So since I have 6 classes of data, notice on my x-axis on the right, I have made 6 marks down at the bottom. I need to know how to label those well. And we do not just take the classes like 31.5 through 37.6 and write that at the bottom. Instead, I'm going to do what's called create the class mark for each of these classes. And the way you create the class mark is you take the high value of the class plus the low value of the class, and then you divide that by 2. So for the first class, the high value is 37.6, the low value is 31.5, and I'm going to divide by 2. And when you throw that into your calculator, you end up with 34.55. So I am going to use that as my class mark. So I'm going to label my first class 34.55. Now, you can go through and do that same thing for each of the classes. If you had already created this frequency distribution, though, you would know that the class width is 6.2. Now, if you hadn't done this problem, then the easiest way to get the class width, remember, it is defined as the difference between 2 consecutive lower or 2 consecutive upper class limits. And so the class width here is 6.2. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the value 6.2 and I am going to add it repeatedly to my value 34.55. So I've got my calculator ready. And when I take 34.55 and I add 6.2 to that, I get 40.75, so that is my next class mark. And when I add 6.2 to that again, I end up with 46.95. And when I add 6.2 for my fourth one, I end up with 53.15. 2 more times, plus 6.2 more ends up with 59.35. And last but not least, when I do it one more time, the result is 65.55. That is the class mark, or the middle of each of those 6 classes. That is the hard part. So we have now got our classes for the income. And now what I need to do is I need to label my frequency. And the frequency here is the number of families. So notice my highest number of families is 5, so this is nice and easy to mark off, 2, 3, 4, 5. However you label your y-axis, just make sure you do it consistently. So if you go by 2s or 5s or 10s. And now the last thing to do is draw my bars. And remember this one thing about your histogram, the bars have to have an equal width. So my first value is 2, so I'm going to straddle the class mark. Remember that is the value in the middle. And there we go, there's my first bar up to 2. My next one should go up to 3. In a histogram, your bars should be exactly next to each other. There should be no gaps between the bars. Okay, so I'm just going to draw a little arrow for your notes that there are no gaps between the bars in a histogram, and also that they should have an equal width. Okay, so do your best as you draw these on your paper. The next one goes up to 5, so I'm going to keep drawing. My next bar is going to go up here. Whee! The fourth one goes up to 3, so it is the same width as the second bar, or the same height, excuse me, as the second bar. The second to last one is 1, and then the final one is 1 as well. A note, if we had a class of 0, then you would just not draw a bar. You would skip, and you'd leave an equal width and skip that. So that is our first drawing. It's called a histogram. We are going to do the same, use this same data, and we're going to draw what's called a frequency polygon. And so I'm just going to try my best to remember, once you have your x and your y axis labeled, when you go to do a frequency polygon, your income is going to be right here. Your frequency is going to be right here. Sorry about those arrows on there. I'm not sure why the computer left those on, but we'll... Oh, there they go. They're gone. So there, what I'm doing is I'm drawing my 6 class marks like I did for the previous problem. I'm remembering that my first class was 34.55. I'm going to need to flip back and forth here in just a second to get the other ones because I'm not remembering exactly what all the other classes were. So if you're remembering those, write those on your paper. And so when I go backwards, we've got 40.75, 46.95, 53.15, 59.35, and last but not least, I've got 65.55. So this x and y axis is the exact same thing, whether you are creating a frequency polygon, which we are going to do now, or a histogram, which we did previously. So all of these 6 marks are the class marks again. Same exact process as we did in the previous problem. And so now what we do, though, is instead of drawing bars, we are going to draw a dot at each data value. So we've got 2, 3, 5, 3, 1, 1. So I make a dot at 2, then I make a dot at 3, and then I make a dot at 5, I make a dot at 3, and last but not least, 1, 1. Now, I don't know if you remember from earlier in the class, but a polygon is a closed figure. So here's what we do. We first connect all the dots. We create like a line graph. Connecting the dots is fun. And then to create a closed figure, a polygon, what you do is on the left side, you take this dot and you just connect it down somewhere on the x-axis. And on the right side, you do the same thing to create the closed figure. And there's the frequency polygon. Enjoy drawing your graphs. Hear from you soon.